I'll make a start. Okay then, Carr House Farm shelf. Um, Location of this building. The map on the right shows that it's between Bradford and Halifax, so it's to the south west of Bradford, 3 or 4 miles out of the city centre. And the map on the left from 1890 um, gives a view of its location. Um, just to the, I guess, just to the northeast of Shelf there on the map. And it's a set of buildings in something called Carr House Fold. So the next slide. Oh, yes, no artificial intelligence was used in this presentation. Next slide shows the enlargement of the previous map. We're looking at those buildings there, or that building there, we've split up into what appears to be four uh, households, probably. Carr House Fold, Carr House Farm itself. And there are buildings around it, a couple of barns, outhouses, etc. And that was in 1890. So I've entitled this talk an architectural appraisal. Um, and really what I'm going to be focusing on is the architectural side of it, of looking at Carr House Farm. Um, there is a lot of documentary and historical information about the building, and other aspects of it as well. But for this 20 minutes or so, or 25 minutes out, I'm going to be looking at the architectural side of it. So on the right-hand side, this is looking at the structures which make up the whole building, the phases in which these structures were added, in some cases taken away through history, the original plan form and how changes to the building affected the plan form and the use of the house and the number of households that were actually in Carr House Farm at any time. And in specifics, we're looking at things like the building materials, um, and things like differences in the windows, and things like the position and types of chimneys and the location of the hearths and fireplaces that those chimneys are serving. And that's, of course, detail which tells us about the original plan form of the whole place. So this is the north or rear elevation. I'll come into this a little bit more detail later on in the talk, but hopefully you can see here that we've got quite a complex elevation to try and record. Um, just one little item in it, you can see there, I noted the straight joint on the left-hand side, and this is a straight joint to show that there's an extension which has been added to an extension. So the original extension which is added to the back of Carr House Farm there, which is the building in the lighter or cleaned sandstone, has itself been extended to the left in fairly recent times to add a kitchen, and you can just hopefully make out a straight joint going up there, and it more or less aligns with the brick chimney pot on top. So that actually forms a little bit of a double pile to the whole Carr House Farm complex there on that left-hand side of it. You can see we've also got a lean-to in clean sandstone, and also a wing there on the right-hand side in clean sandstone. And looking at the back, there's the blackened sandstone of, well, what's probably the original building. This is our drawing of that elevation, and you could see from the previous photograph that it's very difficult to photograph the whole thing. There's stuff in the way, like in most recording efforts. It requires a good drawing really to show all the features that are of interest to us when we're studying the history of the building. And this here shows us that we've got lots of windows popped into this elevation. They're all of a very similar type with similar window surrounds. Um, and it shows us we've got buildings tied in with um, tied stones tying the further extension here to the extension, and also tying in the porch to the extension, the original building at the back in blackened, and the wing here. And we've also got an external stack on the right hand side. So that's the drawing, the scale drawing of the whole of the rear elevation. If we move round now to the south, our front elevation, we've got something completely different. um, so the south elevation, 2025, this is a photograph that Graham Steele took. And again, in 2025, it's not possible really to get a good photograph of the entire south elevation. So we have to resort really to have piecing bits together, photographs together, or taking a photograph at an oblique angle. Taking a photograph at an oblique angle has its benefits actually, because I hope you can see with this one, as you look along that elevation, we've got continuous courses running along the entire elevation here. So you can see a single course goes all the way to the end, um, both upstairs and downstairs. So, and there's nothing added to it. Looks not like there's anything taken away. So we've got the first bullet point there. What I think is a relatively rare, for the area, largely unaltered elevation there compared to the north elevation, which have had the bits added to it. Now, it says there's no joints or breaks in the masonry. So I think that we understand that implies it's just a single build for this range here. So that's a useful bit of information. However, having done this slide, I looked at it in more detail, and because we've got quite a bit of time this evening, one thing which I noted quite recently is, having made that point, is that if you look at these courses here on the left hand side of the two sets of mullion windows, this upstairs mullion window here has got one, two, three courses running into it on the left hand side, but on the right hand side it's got four courses emerging from it. So does that really tell us anything? Is that something that we need to be aware of? Well, yes, I think we need to be aware of it, but how it affects the interpretation, I'm not entirely sure. So I immediately looked at the downstairs window. Is that the same? You've got one, two, three, four, five courses compared to one, two, three, four, I think five courses. So downstairs it looks pretty similar, although the courses don't seem to line up. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how significant that is and what possible interpretation you could put on it. So I'm going to ignore that. But I'll just point it out just to show that these things pop up all the time. When you're recording buildings, you notice things that you've never been noticed before. How significant they are, who knows? But I'm sticking with the fact this is all one build, because those lovely courses continue more or less straight through to the end of the building. So now we'll look at these wonderful windows. At this west end of the upstairs, if we look at that first, the west end, the first floor mullion windows are chamfered. You can see there's chamfered there, three mullions, and each one's chamfered, and the mullions are flush with the surface of the building. If you look at the ground floor window, comparable window, the west end ground floor window, this is double recessed and chamfered. So the actual face of the mullions is recessed from the face of the building. And then, of course, the windows themselves are recessed beyond that. And so you get this arrangement here where you've got two chamfers So that's quite a relatively early feature, I think. Now, does that mean that the ground floor windows are earlier than the upper floor windows? Or does it mean that it's a higher status room and the upper floor windows, you just have to make do with this sort of single recessed, these single chamfered windows? Just a question there. Um, but in terms of status of these windows and the importance of the rooms, we have, if you look here, the hood molds. And here we've got a hood mold above the third ground floor window here, which used to run along above this window here as well, with these returns or ears. This stops at the end of them like that. So that's quite a nice feature there to survive this 17th century feature to survive all those years. If you look, that used to continue, but it's been hacked away there over this window here, which is a very similar style of window to this one. But then if you go along a little bit further still, there's a separate hood mold over this window. We'll see this clear on the next slide. But we won't, because the next slide, I put this slide in first. Um, because a quick note about the documentary history of Carr House Farm. It's got a very rich documentary history. Um, First firm mention of the farm is in 1666, when it's recorded that Robert Birkhead and his son sold the house, etc., to John Smith, who died in 1686. Um, so Carr House is mentioned in documents before 1666, but it's the first time an actual messuage or house or a building is mentioned is in 1666. So I think that elevation we've just been looking at, most of it dates from, if not all of it, dates from 1666. For the documents, I think of most relevance for this presentation when we're looking at the structure and the architectural appraisal is this inventory of 1700 of Timothy Smith of Carr House. And in this probate inventory of 1700, 8 rooms are mentioned in this order. We've got a house body, a kitchen, a milk house, a south and north parlour, north chamber, a chamber over the house, and a shop. So I think if you look at those 8 rooms, of course, inventories are tricky to interpret because not always are all the rooms mentioned in an inventory that might have been in a building. Sometimes rooms aren't mentioned. For example, if they've got no goods in them, which are actually contain uh, things that need to be recorded in the inventory. So if the room is empty, I think we're assuming that the room isn't mentioned. So, but in this case, I think we've got 3 principal, well, at least 3 principal ground floor rooms, which will be the house body, the parlour, north and south, one behind the other, and the workshop. Parlour, house body, and the workshop, and then 2 chambers, north chamber and a chamber over the house. Oh, and the milk house and the kitchen, I think we're going to be at the back. So the front rooms are going to be the house body, probably the south parlour because this is south facing, and the shop. So the items within these are listed and valued, and the 2 chambers mentioned are presumably first floor rooms, leaving these 6 ground floor rooms. This is the scale drawing of that south elevation we saw a few minutes ago. Now, the windows, I think, what we've got here, we've got the ground floor and the upper floor, we've got 4, what appear to be 4 major windows. Are there 4 rooms? Well, I think if we can interpret this elevation as being an elevation showing a parlour, a house body, and a workshop, and the passage, of course, which isn't mentioned in the inventory. then I think looking at this elevation, I would interpret it as originally the house body covering these two windows downstairs here. Quite a big room. We've got potentially the main house body window here on the left, big fire, potentially a big fire window on the right here, passage, and then on the left hand side here, parlor window, and on the right hand side, one of the few changes to this elevation is at this right hand side has suffered a little bit due to the fact that what appears to have been a blocked window now here has had a modern door put in. And this blocked window here is lower than these other windows here, you can see. But it nevertheless was a chamfered mullioned window. The stubs of the mullion still exist there, and it would have been a four-light window. So I'm proposing that the window suggests parlour, house body, and then service or workshop at the right-hand side. Now I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, David, this passage here, you're talking about a house body, there's a chimney stack bang in the middle there of your house body. That can't be right, can it? Well, I'm going to argue that this chimney stack is a later insertion. So I'm saying the central and east chimney stacks are probably later. So that's the central chimney stack here and east chimney stack there. Later, well, 18th century, early 19th century, we'll see later on. Former windows and the door at the east end blocked and replaced. So this is four-light window. I think was a workshop, slightly lower end, lower window, and then the passage in between. Blocked. This is probably the original surround with a chamfer to it, and later window put in. So the passage is being blocked. The first floor window has also been blocked, but that's had square section, mullions and jambs, etc. Now, back in whenever that was, 1980s, I think, courtesy of Ben Staples, got this photograph attributed to Cyril Metcalfe, who uh, uh, took it and made that note on the top there, Cyril Metcalfe. This is from the file of the history of Carr House Farm, yep, from the 1980s. Later changes around the farm itself with buildings added beyond this, what was the garden at the front there, means now you can't really get this shot anymore, the whole of the front elevation. And I've included it because it's got the windows painted in and it shows you quite nicely the changes, the way where the windows are and the changes that have been made to the windows. On the right hand side here we can see that mullions have been taken out in the parlour window, and the house body, the main window, two of those lights have been blocked, two mullions taken out, but the centre mullion remains. And the fire window, if that's what it was, the mullions still remain there. Upstairs, yeah, the mullions still remain for the chamber above the house and the chamber above the parlour, at least the south parlour, and then the chamber above the other part of the house there. This looks like it's been possibly added later on, because these are square section mullions, more of the 18th century, later 18th century, than the chamfered mullions elsewhere. We can't find any evidence of what was here before this window was put in, and it doesn't look like it appears on the inventory either. There's another blocked window here, blocked plaque there, and you can see window, wider window there with this one inserted. This window has now been taken out completely. This long sash window been taken out and replaced by like a doorway, a double doorway leading out into the garden. Right, okay, so what have we learned? What can we interpret so far from what we've learned so far? This is going to be, this slide hopefully is going to help us with the naming of the constituent parts. This is always a tricky thing. You call things by their original names, what they might have been, or the modern names, the rooms, so forth. But what I'm going to try and do is identify the various bits of this complex building. So we've got here, the oldest bit is the linear range, separated into four bays, bay 1, bay 2, bay 3 and bay 4. Bay 1 is the parlour, bay 2 and 3, house body and passage, bay 4, the workshop. Added to that later on, we've got a rear wing, which is the thing with the ridge down the middle. And then we've got, added to that, we've got the extension, which is makes it double pile at this right-hand end here. And then a further extension with that straight joint there, which I pointed out earlier on. And then added to that a lean-to, which is porch, essentially giving access to the extension. I think, yeah, it gives access to the extension, not directly into the bay 3 here. So if we're looking at trying to put that plan onto the north elevation, um, the north elevation doesn't speak to us in the same way at all, as I hope you can see. So if we're talking about house, excuse me, the house body here or the parlour here, I mean, it's all completely different. You cannot come to any sort of interpretation looking at the north extension, sorry, the north elevation. We need that south elevation to be able to interpret the early building and how it's changed, because all the windows have all been replaced here in this early part of the linear range. We can see they're all pretty well the same date. Slightly different windows in the extension, possibly a bit later, a bit wider, with these timber framed mullion and transoms, sills and lintels, and possibly later still in the further extension here. So looking at this east end from the left-hand side here, the gables, you see the extension is its own little building, which has been added onto the linear range. And this is the linear range here, which continues, of course, all the way to the nearly to the end. It actually continues to more or less where this chimney pot is here, and the extension to the extension continues that bit further there. So yep, all replaced. All of these, I think, are features of the 18th century and later. There's one exception, of course. There's always a little exception, something to make life interesting. For some reason, this window here has got a chamfered lintel, so, and a chamfered sill and chamfered jambs. Why on earth, if that is the case, no idea. Was it reused? Did they decide to save it? Who knows? I can't explain that, but it's there. It needs pointing out. And of course, we've got the external stack here, which I think is part of the original parlour fireplace from the 17th century. Some pictures, a photo by Graham Steele here to put a bit more onto that. Just to remind you, this is the further extension with the straight joint. You can see coins here to show that this was the end of the extension, or one up and one down building. And you can see the nature of these window surrounds. These are the architectural features we used to try and date this extension, further extension, etc., along with obvious things like from the structure of it, it's clear that this has been added on, the further extension to this bit here with the straight joint and the fact that it's been tied in. And we'll see also from the plan form. Lean to a porch, yeah, that's been tied in as well with stones which cut across the straight joint here. The right-hand side of the elevation, that's the end of the lean-to that we can see. Yes, pardon my slight confusion over it. There used to be a door here. Um, it used to be a porch. There's an entrance to it, which basically gave access to the house that was in this little bit of the linear range. But when bits of this whole complex are consolidated into slightly fewer dwellings than there were 100 years ago, when we're talking about 6 or 7 or more dwellings in here. This porch door was blocked, and what was the porch was incorporated into a utility room, or made into a utility room for the, the dwelling on the right hand side here. So this is lean-to now is only accessed from the inside. The rear wing is a mirror image, so this left-hand side is the same as the right-hand side, dividing wall in between. So this is a rear wing that's been added to provide extra service for 2 separate dwellings. One dwelling in, on the left-hand side of this bit of the linear range, and another dwelling on the right-hand side of this bit of the linear range, with a wall in between, providing extra service. Right. Having taken all that in, that seems all relatively straightforward, hopefully. At least it seems relatively straightforward to me so far, apart from that window, which with the chamfers and the north elevation. The thing that causes me sleepless nights about Carr House Farm is this, the bits that are highlighted or marked out in red. Sorry about that. Marked out in red there. We've talked about the wing here and it being the later service room of structure to provide identical service for number 1, number 2. You see, number 1 and number 2, single room, wide, upstairs as well, no room for any service. So this was obviously added on when this was divided into 2 residences. There's your chimneys. Number 1's got the original fireplace for the 17th century house. Number 2's got his fireplace here off that stack, which I called into question right at the start. There's also a fireplace on the other side into heating what I'm calling the farmhouse here. The farmhouse also incorporates the extension, which is this single pile bit added onto the back here. But when you come to measure this little lot and draw it up, you find that this wall here, which is a nice thick rear wall, doesn't align with this wall here, which is another nice thick rear wall. Unfortunately, we cannot see any of this wall here because it's completely covered by the farmhouse. So any features are lost on here. We cannot see them. We can see upstairs that there are no early features on this wall at all. The bits we can see, which are covered, no early features, are all 18th and 19th century windows in there, apart from that window. So this particular shape here of the linear range, we note that the rear wall of the east end, this end of the linear range, is not aligned with the rest of the range. And I've looked And we haven't really found any examples of a singular original layout. Have been None have been found. Some things are similar to this, but they're always complex arrangements with lean-tos or additions. And the examples I have seen, I've not ever really been convinced, if I've looked at them in detail, that they're exactly the same as this, where you've got discontinuity like that. And what is the reason for this? I'll come to that. One wall has it been rebuilt out of line? Is was this yeah, is this the original wall? I don't think so because there are no early features in it. Was this the original wall? We can't tell because it's covered by the farmhouse. We'd have to use other evidence. How about the gable? So if we're thinking about that west end of that rear north wall, evidence for the reposition of that rear wall, I'm suggesting that there's a probable earlier roof line in the masonry. The masonry on the north side is shallower pitch than the south side. So you can see here, this is shallower pitch here than this. And obviously, this is obviously deeper here than that. And if the rear wall, north elevation, was in its original build, it should show signs of any earlier block windows blocked when replaced by the vertical sash-shaped windows. But there's nothing there. So this wall running along here, I'm proposing isn't the original wall. So why not rebuild the whole rear wall beyond bay 3? So we've seen a bit where that wall steps in. If the extension was already built, then that would prevent it. And this is going to be my argument that the extension was already built if and when this this rear of the building here was extended outwards to the north to provide more space. So this drawing here hopefully shows that the dotted red line is the probable earlier roof line and the line of the original rear wall of the building, which has been rebuilt, probably reusing the same stone. Just another little thing to add in here to mention it because it is a significant feature. Block door here in this gable elevation. I think this is a later feature because later put in because otherwise it would have gone straight into the parlour. And I think there's a feature associated with the division of Carr House Farm into 5, 6, or 7 dwellings. So it's provided access to the rear door access almost into this dwelling at the west end of the linear range. Well, I was thinking maybe some of you aren't convinced. If you're still not convinced, well, I thought I'd better throw in my best bit of evidence. This wonderful king post roof truss. So this wonderful king post roof truss, it says here, with diagonal struts, is between bay 3 and bay 4, which is the passage more or less above the passage between bay 3, which is the house body, and the workshop upstairs. There's no evidence downstairs, of course, but yep, here it is. And this is the view from the bedroom over what would have been the workshop. So this is looking at it from the east. Got a few details here. You might just notice an empty mortise here for a brace up to the ridge, which has been replaced here. It's a thinner ridge than what would have originally been there, but brace up to the ridge. And I think the purlins have also been replaced. You can see here on this right-hand side, this is the north side, which is the side that has been extended or rebuilt. You see the purlins had to be lifted significantly to take into account the more shallow roof pitch on this right-hand side. If we look the other side, the other bedroom, the other side of this wall, we can see the tie beam. But sadly, the rest of the truss isn't visible. You can see here this bedroom has been underdrawn, and you can see a hatch there. If you're brave enough and you stick your head through that little hatch and indeed your shoulders and look up at the wall, hoping to see the other side of this, it's not there. It's been bricked in, so you can't see the other side of this. It's a real shame. However, what you can see is the original ridge, and you can see a lovely empty mortise in the original ridge, which would have taken the brace up from the king post up to that ridge. Terrific. The other really important thing to say is that where this white arrow is marked here by these clothes, this rack and this closed door, that's the end of the tie beam. And you might notice that actually the wall is beyond this rack of clothes, so it's beyond the end of the tie beam. And hopefully the next slide, yes, that's that door, There's this. Now, that looks like a wall plate to me. Unfortunately, we can't see anything else of this on the other side or anything to try and work out whether this is actually anything like a relic of a timber frame building with a tie beam, normal assembly with a dovetail into a wall plate with with a principal rafter above it. I'm not sure, but that's possibly also chamfered there. Could we have something that's even earlier? I'm not enough evidence, unfortunately, to go any further than that, but what I think it is made clear is the building didn't go as far to the north. It wasn't as wide as it originally was. So I think we're looking at a difference between 495 centimeters across from wall to wall, the narrower part of the building, 580 centimeters to the widest part of the linear range. Okay, right, carpenter's marks. This is truss number 3. Those are the carpenter's marks. So we're looking at trusses 1 and 2 would have been in bay 1 to bay 3. These trusses have been removed by the masonry cross walls. Sadly, there's no truss 1 and 2 left. So what I'm proposing is truss 3 is more or less there where that narrow red line is. What I'm proposing is that the red bits are mid-17th century, and the dotted line indicates the original mid-17th century line of that with a cross passage, through passage. That in the late 18th century, the wall was extended northwards here for these bays, and these cross walls put in, and this cross wall put in with hearths on either side. So you've got heating for these, what were to become new dwellings. So division up. The extension, I think, was probably 1753. There is actually a rough date stone recited in this wall with 1783 in it. I think that the further extension was put in between 1800 and 1808. The later extension, late 19th century. For this 19th century stuff, there is, of course, map evidence for this. From about 1808 onwards, we've got decent maps. So I think the extension was built on the back of Bay 4 using the original rear wall. Position kept the through passage open, which is where the porch is now. Though structurally an extension, it was probably built as a one up, one down, self-contained cottage. All these changes come about due to the industrialisation of the area, the 19th century and the need for housing. I say the subdivision of Carr House Farm, we're looking at 6 or 7 dwellings ultimately. And just a quick one on the inventory. I think the south parlour was at the left there, house body with probably a fire hood, reredos there, cross passage, workshop and extension with north parlour, kitchen and milk house at the back. More service space was needed, hence the moving of the rear wall there and a couple of early maps. So thank you very much to the recording team. And also thanks to householders, Mary and Lyndon, and thanks to Ben Stables and Mary Twentyman for the historical research. There's a lot of that in the report itself. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.